Iqbal Mohamed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to speak to my amendments, New Clause 7 and Amendment 12. I do support the intentions of the bill and want to strengthen it with the amendments I've submitted, which I believe are essential to ensuring this legislation delivers real, lasting impact for our climate, our economy, and our position on the global scale. The bill rightly seeks to unlock private investment in the UK sustainable aviation fuel through a revenue certainty mechanism. This is a welcome and necessary step that gives certainty to businesses looking to invest in this world-leading mechanism that intends to decarbonise the aviation sector. But if we're serious about climate leadership and look to prevent the worst effects of climate breakdown, and if we are serious about long-term energy resilience, then we must do more than build a framework. We must prioritise the right fuels. That is why my amendment, New Clause 7, focuses on power-to-liquid sustainable aviation fuel, or PTL SAF. Madam Deputy Speaker, not all SAF is created equal. Power-to-liquid SAF is the cleanest, most sustainable option we have, in my opinion. It's made from renewable electricity and captured carbon, and it doesn't rely on limited or environmentally questionable feedstocks like used cooking oil or palm derivatives. It is future-proof, and it is essential if we are to hit our net zero targets without compromising environmental integrity. The government itself, in its SAF mandate guidance, recognises that power-to-liquid fuels as having the greatest potential, and the Committee on Climate Change has said we need 13 terawatt-hours of synthetic fuel by 2040 to stay on a credible path to net zero. The potential is there, but it will remain untapped unless we take deliberate action to bring this industry to life. My amendment, NC7, is simple but strategic. It requires the Secretary of State to use the powers under this bill to prioritise entering into at least one revenue certainty contract with a power-to-liquid SAF producer, where doing so will allow a project to reach final investment decision by the end of 2026. I'm not asking for handouts. I'm asking for the government to show leadership needed to de-risk the first mover, just as other countries are doing across Europe and North America. Without that certainty, no bank will lend and no project will proceed. This amendment would send a clear message. The UK is open for clean aviation, self-reliance and energy security. I will give way.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. He's making some very persuasive points. Does my honourable friend agree? I, for example, support the intentions of this bill, and pushing for these fuels is absolutely the right thing to do. But we must also keep focus on the wider opportunities in hydrogen, battery electric systems and next generation e-fuels as some examples if the UK is to be a leader in this technology.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I do wholeheartedly agree. We in the UK have the capabilities to be a leader in these technologies, and we must take a collective approach on green energy for both environmental and economic gains. We need certainty for investment in private capital, so for private capital to flow in, and the delivery of long-term taxpayer returns. Moving on to my second amendment, Amendment 12, which looks at the SAF mandate itself. It requires a review within 12 months of the sub-target for power-to-liquid fuel to assess whether it's ambitious enough and whether it reflects the urgency of the climate challenge and the pace of international competition. This is not about setting targets in haste. It is about ensuring our targets are based on evidence, consultation and real-world feasibility. The amendment explicitly requires engagements with PTL producers, airlines, experts and wider stakeholders, and it requires a report to be laid before Parliament. Let me be clear, I do not stand alone in calling for this. More than 130 organisations, from airlines and clean energy firms to researchers and investors, have called on the government to prioritise PTL through this bill. They've called for urgent engagement, timely regulation and a clear pathway to a commercial-scale plant in the UK by 2026. We already know the EU is moving faster with more ambition on PTL, alongside Canada and the United States. If we fall behind, we will become importers of clean fuel, not exporters of clean technology. And we will miss the industrial opportunity staring us in our face. Time is of the essence, and we must all work together to get this right. This is a... I will give.
I'm listening very carefully to what he says, and I completely support his good intentions. The problem with sustainable aviation fuel is it costs perhaps 5 times more expensive than what we're paying already, that the stocks are very limited, and if we're talking about livestock feeds, it's even more difficult. So I'm completely with him on the ambition, but we've got to also protect the consumer rights, the right to fly at reasonable costs, the cost of the economy. So this must be, like all these green energy policies, it must be a balance, and I'm sure he'll agree with that.
Iqbal Mohamed.
I thank my right honourable friend for his intervention, and I do understand his point. This is a transition. We are moving away from fuels that are killing our environment and our ability to survive on planet Earth. So it's a responsible thing to do, to find ways to reduce our reliance on carbon-generating fossil fuels to more cleaner alternatives. And this may not be the final solution for aviation. It may be a transition, and future technologies and innovations might allow us to stop the use of such fuels altogether. So as I was saying, more than 130 organisations, from airlines and clean energy firms to researchers and investors, have called on the government to prioritise PTL through this bill. They've called for urgent engagement, timely regulation and a clear pathway to a commercial-scale plant in the UK by 2026. I've also mentioned that the EU is moving faster alongside countries like Canada and the United States, and that we must not miss this industrial opportunity to take a lead and progress the innovative SAF alternatives and license that technology around the world. So we must act decisively, not incrementally. So I support the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Bill, but I believe we have a responsibility to make it stronger, bolder, more targeted towards the fuels that will truly deliver net zero. My amendments are practical, proportionate and widely supported. They do not add cost, they add clarity, confidence and a commitment to a sector that needs all three. If we want to lead the world in clean aviation, Madam Deputy Speaker, then we must lead with action, not just ambition. I call on friends and colleagues and those from across the House to support the amendments in my name, and in doing so give PTL the foothold it needs to take off in the UK.